So now that we've taken a look at the GUI tools, let's take a look at PowerShell, right? The posh commandlets that we can use to create user accounts and manipulate user accounts and create and manipulate global security groups and organizational units and things in Active Directory. And when you have to do a whole batch of objects, such as provisioning AD with dozens or hundreds of user accounts and security groups and OUs, PowerShell is the only way to go. The GUI tools aren't really adequate for doing things en masse or doing a large batch of things. And the GUI tools are really simply using PowerShell behind the scenes, if you think about it. So any way you look at it, knowing the PowerShell is going to help you understand what's going on under the hood in AD. And understanding things like object-oriented concepts like inheritance and an inheritance hierarchy, that's going to illuminate the structure of AD to you and how AD works, just because you'll be able to see how AD was developed, how it was coded, how it was actually programmed. So what I want to do, I want to run ICE with administrative privileges. Right-click and say Run as Administrator, and yes. And in this case, I'm on a domain controller itself, so I don't really have to worry about the steps I need for remote connectivity. But if I was connecting from a Windows 10 workstation or a 2019 workstation into a domain controller to access AD, there's just a few steps I would need to take. And we've gone over these steps in multiple videos, like that series of videos on setting up 2019 core server or setting up Active Directory on 2019 core server. We go over these steps in detail. Each PowerShell command, if you look in the details of the video itself, it's indexed. And there's index numbers by the minute and by the second of each command and each topic. And you can click on that and it'll take you right to the spot in the video and go into much more detail on those commandlets and how you would set up both your domain controllers on the server side, the core side, and how you would set up your remote management workstation on the remote management side, okay? On the server, the domain controller, you'd want to run winrm quickconfig to enable remote management and or Enable-PSRemoting. And then on the client, you need to set your execution policy to unrestricted if you want to be able to run lots of different posh scripts without worrying about, changing your execution policy. Then I would need to set up a session, okay? Create a session to connect to the Active Directory module to get access to those Active Directory commandlets we need in posh to do the things we want to do, create and manipulate objects in AD. And that would be these 3 lines here, okay? Import session, and then I could test it with any command. And in this case, I'm already on and connected to a domain controller. So if I grab this, those are all my domain controllers there, right? And if I just wanted to list them by name, just a test environment, there's only 2 here, Galactica, and of course Pegasus would be the other one, right? But I could also get ADUser, right? And get all my user accounts. So that's just a test. I mean, I could also use autocomplete, right? And there's all of my get commands. Remember, every get has a set, every set has a get. Well, almost that way anyway. That's because these are, if you follow along with C++ or Java or PowerShell, if you go through that series of videos on PowerShell, these are accessor methods. They're a way to access private or protected data with inside of a class object. It's a special function that's made public that you can use to access that private or protected data. But that just lets us know that we are scoped into, connected to the Active Directory module, into all the commandlets therein, okay? I'm going to clear my console. We'll try to go through this bit by bit, piece by piece, just a brief introduction to some of the basic commandlets that I think you would find very useful once you get Active Directory set up and you're trying to populate it with user accounts, trying to provision user accounts for everyone in your organization, you're going to want to go into scripting. You're not going to want to do all that manually in, using ADAC or ADUC. It would take you forever. So you would find these commands useful, I believe. So one of the first things we want to take a look at is how to create an organizational unit. That's the primary object for organizing things with group policy and permissions in Active Directory. So placing things into different OUs enables us to give those objects different permissions, different policies, things like that. Just enables us to organize things in a much more granular and concise way. So the first command that we'll look at is New-ADOrganizationalUnit, and that's to create an OU and AD. And we're going to create a parent OU first. We're going to call it rebel forces parent. That's the name attribute or parameter. And for the path, it's just an LDAP path, right? Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. In this case, it's a parent OU, so it's going to be right at the root level of our domain component battlestars.domain component fleet. Okay? And I'm going to copy and paste these over here into a test file so we can just sort of isolate them and see them one at a time. So if I run this command, let's go take a look. If we open up Active Directory Users and Computers, ADUC, open our domain, and notice here is our organizational unit, right? If I right-click Properties, go to Object, look at its LDAP path, the domain, and then the parent OU, okay? I'm going to minimize that, and we'll have to refresh it later because we're going to make a child OU now. So get rid of that, come over here, and the next command we want to do, in this command, we want to create a child organizational unit, okay? And to make a child OU, it's the same process. We're passing on the same parameters, but notice our path is a bit different this time. We still have two domain components, battlestars and fleet, but we've added to our LDAP path the OU equals rebel forces. That's the name of the parent OU object, right? So to create a child organizational unit, we specify the parent in the lightweight directory access protocol path, or LDAP path. Okay, so I run this command. And again, if I go back, and I'll have to refresh, I may have to close and reopen ADUC, but see if, okay, so a refresh is good enough there. And you can see the path here, right? Here's the parent domain, here's the parent OU, here's the child OU. Same thing if I click over here, Properties, and if I go to the Object tab, I can see the full LDAP path. Here's the parent domain, here's the parent OU, and here is the child OU. And if I were setting a group policy, I could apply a group policy to this OU and link it, a GPO, group policy object, and I could override inheritance, or I could block policy inheritance on that entire OU if I wanted to. Normally, inheritance works to your advantage. So we set up GPOs up here at the domain level, and by inheritance, it propagates down into all of our parent and child OUs. But optionally, we could, using different options, organizational unit options, we could enforce inheritance so it couldn't be blocked. We could override inheritance. We can combine different GPOs together in our inheritance hierarchy. We'll do a whole series of videos on that. Again, as I said, that's a topic in and of itself. And, this video would be like 10 hours long if we tried to include all the topics that go along with group policy. So we're trying to break this elephant up into bite-sized pieces, right? So in this video, we're only going to focus on creating organizational units, groups, user accounts, and manipulating, moving, deleting, changing attributes on those objects. That's enough. That's quite enough for a meal. And then we'll do another series of videos on group policy, but just be aware that one of the key advantages of using OUs is when you combine them with group policy. Sort of like we said when we talked about arrays and PowerShell, right? In the PowerShell series, one of the key advantages of using an array be it two-dimensional or 1D array or parallel arrays, is when you combine them with repetition structures. That's when they become really powerful. And you can do a lot with just a little bit of code. Well, Active Directory is no different. When you combine organizational unit structure and an inheritance hierarchy with group policy objects, my goodness, what wonderful things you can do when they all work together. So, a whole other series of videos on that topic. We won't have time to cover it here. So if you hear things and you're like, well, what are you talking about, Carly? What the heck is that? Don't worry about it. That'll be for other, we'll do that in other bite-sized portions in other videos, okay? So we've created our parent OU, we've created our child OU. Let's go back to our script, our code here, and get rid of that in our tests. And we're going to create another parent and another child. In this case, I'll just do both at the same time, okay? So we're going to run both of these at the same time. It's New-ADOrganizationalUnit. It'll be import versus parent, import versus child. The only thing that's, noticeably different, I guess, would be the LDAP path, right? Here it's just the parent domain because it's a parent OU. Here it's the parent domain and the parent OU because it's a child OU. So let's go ahead and create both of these. Okay. And again, if we go look in ADOC, let's do a little refreshing here. Okay, and we have rebel versus parent and rebel versus child. And we have empire versus parent and empire versus child. And if we look at the properties, it follows the same structure, right? Parent domain, parent OU, child OU. Okay? And now we're going to make an OU called Sith-Lords. And we'll use this a little bit later on when we are manipulating and moving objects in AD, but we're going to create another organization unit called Delete This OU, just for the purpose of removing that. I'm going to paste these over here. So again, this is all new AD organizational unit. We're just making OUs. Notice both of these will be at the parent level, right? The root level of our domain. All right, so created those, and got two instances running there. Let me refresh ADOC and rebel versus parent. And let me do that again. There, okay. Had to refresh. All right, so here's my parent level OU Sith-Lords, and here's one delete this OU. And remember when we do that these are protected from accidental deletion. So I have to uncheck this and click apply before it's going to let me delete it. I'm not going to uncheck it right now. And that only becomes visible if I have advanced features enabled under view. Remember? Just sort of reviewing that topic, okay? All right. So we've had our fun with creating OUs. Let's move on. What about setting attributes on an OU that has already been created? Okay, so let's take a look at that. And we will first take a look at this. And I'm going to put this on a separate line. And the way to do that is if you find the tilde on your keyboard, then the character right under that, if you do a space and add that in, you can actually separate on, or move to a separate line, a commandlet. And normally if I did that, it would be a syntax error. It would confuse the interpreter, but in this case, no. And I just want to set the description tag of an OU that already exists, in this case, rebel versus parent. Sounds like my cat wants to get in. So I'm going to run this. All right, so this is Set-ADOrganizationalUnit, not Get, or not New-ADOrganizationalUnit. Cat, you are really throwing off my concentration here. Hang on, let me go take care of my cat. No, be good. I'm working on a video here. Be good. Be good. We can have love time later. We can have lovey time later, but no lovey time right now. No lovey time right now. Lovey time later, okay? I gotta finish this video. Alright. Where were we? Okay, yeah, we're looking at Set-ADOrganizationalUnit. No, stop. Stop. No, don't mess with the microphone. Stop. Stop. Behave. Behave. Okay. Good boy. Good boy. All right. Where were we? Okay. Set-ADOrganizationalUnit. Okay. And let's go take a look at ADUC and see what's happening there. But notice that set our label here. So it contains member of rebel forces against Emperor Palpatine's evil empire. Okay. And again, that was, we set that attribute using Set-ADOrganizationalUnit to basically change an attribute of an OU that already exists. Okay. And let's take a look at another one. And we'll move this over to test our code here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add another line, just using that character underneath the tilde there. And in this case, to the child object itself. And if I run that, now rebel forces parent, let me actually do a refresh here. A lot of times with ADUC, when you make a change, you have to refresh it. Okay, so now that I refresh it, notice that description tag is now also on the child OU, as well as the parent OU. Okay, so in this case, we're using Set-ADOrganizationalUnit to set attributes on an organizational unit that already exists. And same thing here, right? If I wanted to do Set-ADOrganizationalUnit, in this case on my Sith Lord's parent OU, and description dark Sith Lords. So if I did that, I'm going to have to again refresh maybe a couple of times here. And now, Sith Lords, if I look at the parent level, still not showing up. All right, let's do another refresh. There, now it's showing up, okay? So now there's my description, dark Sith Lords, right there. Okay, so Set-ADOrganizationalUnit. So we looked at creating an OU with New-ADOrganizationalUnit. We looked at setting attributes on an OU with Set-ADOrganizationalUnit. Let's look at getting information from an OU, okay? Or getting information about organizational units in AD, and that's our get, right? For every set, there's a get. So if I were to run this, I'm going to clear my console and hit F5 and run it. And these are my OUs. Delete this OU, Sith Lords, Empire Forces, Child and Parent, Rebel Forces, Child and Parent, Child OU, Parent OU, and so forth. Now, let's say I wanted to be more specific with the filter command. Filter is just a way to scope into things. So I could add some curly braces, and I could say name, like, and in quotes, I'm going to use wildcard and say Seth. Anything with Seth, okay? And if I were to run that, so notice I get my OU for Sith Lords. And also notice that there's a lot more to these attributes if I type in FL. All right. So there's more attributes to that organizational unit object. In addition, I can also pull in multiple properties. That's only a few of the properties that I get from Get-ADDoMainController, but if I wanted to get all the properties on the Sith Lord's OU, I could pass in this to FL, format list, and look at all of these attributes here. And here's my description tag, created, timestamp, things like that. let's say I wanted to find rebel. Okay, and in this case, I'm not going to do a full listing. I'm not going to do all the properties, but we'll just get anything that is like rebel. All right, and let's say we just wanted to return the name. There's a parent and a child for rebel, right? So I'm going to hit F5. And, oh, forgot my select statement there. Let's select there, all right? So there's just a parent and a child for rebel forces. Okay, so does that kind of give you an idea of Get-ADDoRganizationalUnit and the filter command, and also the optional properties command? Again, there's a lot more to an OU or to a user object or to a group than is normally displayed. And you can optionally select multiple properties. Like I could say name, you know, other attributes if I wanted to, or I could simply grab them all. If I did this, I'm just going to pull off the select name and I'm going to pipe it to FL. If I get all the properties, then, and let's run that. All right, so there's a lot more properties that go with that organizational unit just by typing that option in. And if I don't do a full listing, it's the same thing there. No properties. And let's see, I'm going to do select name. All right, that's just the name portion. And without properties, wildcarding properties. All right. Not getting me the description. And I could also do this. I could say properties. I could specifically pull just the name and just the description using properties like that. Name, description. And I'm going to pipe this to FL. There. Just narrow down our output here and clear this and run that. And then that way I just get the name and the description. So, and you know, combining different ways of piping the output and what you select with the properties option, and things like FL or select or FT format table, you know, you can manipulate and control the output when you're looking for a specific piece of information. It works kind of like grep, you know, using combinations of like filter and where and PowerShell works a lot like the grep command. If you guys are used to like, you know, Linux and you know, bash scripts, born again shell. Okay, so let's take a look at one more of these, and we're going to get, and in this case, a specific identity. All right, so we looked at using the Get-ADDoRganizationalUnit with a filter command to get a specific OU. We looked at getting all OUs. Now let's look at identity. And identity would be basically the LDAP string, or the LDAP location, right? So I could get a specific OU by its LDAP location. So fleet, battle stars, and then the actual organizational unit name, rebel forces parent. And I'm going to clear the console and hit F5, and if I run this, see? So there I am. I'm getting rebel forces parent specifically using the identity option and an LDAP string, okay? And same options apply with piping. If I wanted to wildcard all the properties, I could do that and get all the properties. And if I only wanted specific properties, I'm gonna use my special character here and put this on another line, but I could just say name and description, and it's really too wide for select or format table, so I'm going to do format list, and I just want to display those details, the name and the description, in sort of a nice, neat line by line output there. So if I did that, and then rebel forces parent, okay? So you have options, many options, but very useful get command. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at moving OUs. Once you've created them, you can get their attributes, you can set their attributes, you can make them. What about if you want to move them around in AD? Well, you sure can do that. And the way to do that, really there's two steps to moving an OU or any other object that is protected from accidental deletion, but primarily OUs because by default they have that option set on them when you create them. So what you're going to need to do first is set protected from accidental deletion to false. By default, that's set to true. And if I tried to move an OU without setting that to be true, it'd give me an error. It would deny me the permission to do that because that OU it's protected. And protecting it from being deleted also means protecting it from being moved, because if you think about it, a move operation is basically a copy and then a delete, okay? So a move operation in and of itself is sort of a delete or potentially destructive operation. You're moving something from one container to another, different GPOs could apply. So I'm going to comment that out for now because I want to show you the error that gets generated, okay? So we need that, and we also, once that has been set to true, we need this command here, okay? And that's the Move-ADObject command, and you can use that on OUs, you can use that on user accounts, you can use that on groups. That account works on all kinds of things, but it doesn't work if protect from accidental deletion is set to false. That has to be to true, actually. It is true. It is true by default, okay? So if I were to get, let's say I want to get AD-Organizational-Unit. All right, so get AD-Organizational-Unit, identity Sith Lords. All right, so here's my Sith Lords OU, okay? And I want to move this OU, all right? Well, I want to get this attribute first, protected from accidental deletion. Let's look at the value of that attribute. And in order to get that attribute, that is a specific property, okay? So I need to get the specific property itself, and I am going to FL it, format list, and we're going to say name, and we're going to say protect from accidental deletion, okay? So we're going to say all that, right? Get AD-Organizational-Unit, identity, Sith Lords, Battlestars, Fleet, all right? That object, the properties, I want protect from accidental deletion, and then the name attribute, and pass that into FL. All right, so if I get that, notice that it's set to true. So if I try to move this organizational unit without turning that off, without setting this property to be false, it's going to generate an error. And that is by design. And so I'm going to go ahead and run it just to show you what that error would look like. Let's try to move AD-object, and if AD works the way it's supposed to, this should generate an error. It should not allow us to do that. All right. So notice it did. It did what it was supposed to do, what it was designed to do. It says, hey, access is denied. You can't do that. That's a potentially destructive operation. Okay, well maybe, look, if AD could talk, that's how AD talks to me. But anyway, okay, I've had a lot of coffee. So we need to set that attribute to false first. And we're going to do that. So I'm going to comment this out. We'll do this one step at a time. I'm going to clear the console. I'm going to now run this command to get our Sith Lords OU, and we're going to set it from true. We'll make it false. So we do that. Okay, and now if I list the properties, look, now it's false. Okay, and so now let's see if we can move that OU. That OU was at the parent level. Let's, again, take a look at where it is before we move it, and we'll take a look at where it is after we move it, okay? So And let's, all right, so Sithlords is right here at our parent level, right under battlestars.fleet, Sithlords. And now we're going to move it. We're going to run this command, Move-ADObject, the identity, the LDAP path of our OU, and the target path. This is where we want to move it to. This is where we're moving it from, the parent, the root level of our domain. Target path is where we're moving it to. So it's Empire Forces parent. So it's going to be nested inside that parent OU along with Empire Forces child will also be Sith Lords, right? Because they serve Emperor Palpatine. So let's go ahead and run Move-ADObject. Okay, now we can run it and no error was generated because this has been set to false, okay? Was true. If we go look at that in AD, we have to refresh it because this is showing us what it looked like. That's the old AD structure, right? So I got to come here to action. I got to click on refresh. And maybe a couple of times. Data from Sithlords is not available because it's not there anymore. There, let's refresh it. Okay, so now see Sithlords is gone. And where it should be, where it was moved to in PowerShell is Empire Forces parent. And see now there are two child OUs here. And one of them is Sithlords. And if we look at the attributes, I'm going to go to properties and object. Notice that that is no longer checked. Protect from accidental deletion is no longer checked. We had to disable that in order to move it. And the same way we have to disable it if we wanted to delete that organizational unit. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's moving. And let's look at deleting an OU, okay? If I wanted to delete an organizational unit, same thing. First, I have to set the protect from accidental deletion attribute to false. Remember, by default, that is set to true. And so if I tried to delete an OU, it would deny me access. I'd get an error. But once I set that to false, yes, then I can delete it. So we'll copy this, put this over here. And again, I'm going to show you the error. Okay, so if I forget to do this, if I forget to remove this option, watch, it's going to generate an error. And this, normally it would prompt you, but in this case, confirm false, that just, it keeps it from prompting me. Sort of like using the force option. If I were doing a batch or removing a bunch of OUs at one time, I wouldn't want to get prompted for each and every single one. So I can use confirm false. So be careful using that. Sometimes you want to be prompted, but look, I'll show you what happens if I don't use it. See, I get this visual prompt here. I'm going to say no. If I add that back, it'll try to do it without prompting me, but I'm still going to get an error because it's protected, right? If I get AD-Organizational-Unit and identity this, and I get the, let's use properties. And I'm going to format list name and that property. Look, right? It's set to true. So if I try to run this, it's, you know, if AD is working right the way it should give me an error. It should say access denied. Let's test that theory. Okay, access is denied. So it's working the way that it should. So if we set it from true to false, right? Protect from accidental deletion, we're going to set it to false in this line. And now let's get the attribute. And let me see. Sithlords, I move that. That's not what I want. I want delete me. There, delete this OU. All right. So now it's set to false. And now if we delete it, it will allow us to delete it with Remove-ADOrganizationalUnit. And I'm just going to do that, and boom, it's gone. And we have to refresh it in AD. It's still here, but we haven't refreshed it yet. Notice if I try to go here, there is no delete this AU. So we just have to refresh it. We'll move up here and refresh it. There, okay, and so it's gone. Okay. And this is just a function. We're going to run a couple of functions here. We're going to get OUs by the canonical name. And we're going to get OUs and then list the number of users in those OUs. So we could do that if we run either of these functions here. So we'll try this one first. All right, and this is just going to list all our organizational units. Okay, and that's just get ADOrganizationalUnit, the properties canonical name. We're using sort object and format table. This is going to create a custom PS object, which remember we went over in file access when we were doing file access for our RPG game in the PowerShell videos series that we did. But so we use this to be able to save our character object and save our game state using custom PS objects, but we can also do that to control our output. And in this case, we're using Get-ADDoRganizationalUnit, right? Our get command, canonical name. And we're looking for the users and the user count in each OU. So I'm going to clear the console and hit F5 to run. And then notice this is our user count, okay? Now let's take a look at groups, okay? So global security groups are very useful for being able to assign and manipulate permissions and group policies and things. So to create a global security group or a new group, we'd use the command New-ADGroup. And we're going to look at this command first. So I'll put it over here in our test section. And I'm going to add our special character here to move it to the next line. And this way we can look at all the attributes. All right. So New-ADGroup, we're passing in the name, the SAM account name, the group category, security, the group scope is global. So just like you can with the GUI, right, with ADOC and ADAC, we could specify these options in PowerShell. The display name is delete me, and here's the LDAP path. Okay, so I'm going to create this in the built-in users container. And the description, it's just going to have delete me as the description. So if I do that, if I go over here, and if I look inside the users container, see here's the group we created. Notice it's global, it's security, it's called delete me. And it has the attributes that we assigned to it. All right, so we created that group. Now let's create another group. The first group we created in a built-in container. I'm going to use our special character again and pop these on the next line. Actually, I'm going to do that there. Let me break this here. Move that to the next line. And then that to the next line. And then that to the next line. All right. So we're going to create another group here. And this is test GSG. Okay. And again, let's look at, kind of refresh things first. All right. Go to the users. And we want to find our test GSG group. And still don't see it. Let me close ADOC. And we'll reopen ADOC. All right, now, and there it is. All right, so test GSG for testing. Okay, so that was a built-in container. What about an organizational unit? All right, so let's do New-ADGroup again. And with our special character, we'll move some of the attributes to other lines so we can see everything here. And let me move that to another line as well. Okay, there we go. All right, so notice the LDAP-path's a bit different. Here, it's at the root domain, but we're going to create this in one of the parent OUs that we created, all right? So customized OU. And it'll be called Evil Empire Admins. And if we go look in Active Directory Users and Computers and Empire Forces, and notice here's our global security group. Emperor Palpatine's Evil Administrators, okay? So there's our GSG, our global security group. So that's New-ADGroup when you want to create a group in PowerShell. Now, if you've already created a group, or a group already exists, and you want to set attributes, you want to change things about that group, then your command of choice would be Set-ADGroup. And I'm just going to grab all of these, and we'll put them here. And the first command we're going to run is this one. The rest are commented out, but we're going to run Set-ADGroup and then identity, and that's the test GSG group that we created inside the built-in users container, right? Look at our LDAP path right here. We're going to set a description on it. So if I were to go to my users container and look at it right now, it's just called GSG for testing. But we want to actually change that attribute on a group that already exists. So I run the command, and I may have to open and close Active Directory Users and Computers for this. And get it to work with it. There we go. Got it to show up with a refresh. All right, so now it's been changed to testing 1, 2, 3, right? Just like it was here. And taking a look at Set-ADGroup, let's say we wanted to change the display name. So first off, let's get ADGroup, right? Every set has a get, every get has a set. I'm going to use identity and this LDAP string here. All right. So the name is Evil Empire Admins. And let's say we want to modify the display name. So let's specifically grab out of properties display name and display name here. All right. So the display name for that group is Evil Empire Admins. And let's say we want to change it to Palpatine's Admins. So I'm going to run this here, Set-ADGroup, the LDAP path for identity, and then display name Palpatine's Admins. Okay, and now if I get the display name, so it was Evil Empire Admins, and now it's Palpatine's Admins. Okay. And if we wanted to set managed by, we could say ADOMA here. I think I have an ADOMA. Under my domain admins, there's an ADOMA. Okay. All right, cool. I'm going to make sure I have a user there before we run that command. All right. Let's say I wanted to change the managed by attribute. Okay. So again, if I were to look at that and try to get let's do a full listing of that group. But notice that, managed by has no value there. Okay. And we'll make that, there, we'll just put that on 2 lines as our output. So managed by, there's no current manager of Evil Empire Admins. And we don't have a Palpatine administrator yet, but we'll put it under Adama. So if I run this code, Set-ADGroup, identity the LDAP path, and managed by Adama. And if we do that in AD users and computers, if I open up the group object itself, notice here's Adama now. He's the manager, okay, of evil empire admins. And I could also get that with a Get-ADGroup and identity and the same LDAP string. And the properties I want to get would be, I'll just wildcard it if we got everything. And notice managed by is now Adama. And we could narrow that down if we wanted to get just the managed by option. Managed by, we could still wildcard it, or we could also just pull the attributes name and managed by under properties. Either way, wildcard. It takes up more memory. It's a bigger return value this way, but we're still only displaying two objects. So the name and Adama. Okay. So again, changing management, and then if we look at Set-ADGroup, this time we're going to change the description. And what was the current description? Emperor Palpatine's evil admins. It's the current description, right? So, and we're going to change it to Vader's evil admins. So Vader took over. He killed the Sith Lord. Now he's in charge, right? Isn't that how it works? The apprentice eventually always ends up killing his master, his teacher. Not a good retirement plan. I don't know if I like how that works, but yeah, I think that's why Jedi. It's better to be a Jedi. Anyway, let's run this. Okay, and now if we go take a look at the description, see if I can, I may have to open and close and reopen. Okay, good. Refresh, did it. But so now it says Vader's evil admins. Okay, so just examples of Set-ADGroup. So we looked at New-ADGroup, Set-ADGroup, how to make an AD group, how to set an AD group. We've already been using the get command, but I'm going to go over that one more time. Remember, every set has a get, every get has a set. So if I wanted to, let me clear the console, hit F5, and by LDAP string, I'm getting my security group test GSG, right? And here, by the LDAP string, I'm going to get all the properties and list all the properties of evil empire admins. And there's, description, display name, canonical name. There's managed by, there's my manager, Adama. So all the properties related to my security group, evil empire admins. So for groups, that covers New-ADGroup, Set-ADGroup, Get-ADGroup. What about moving an object? In the same way that we moved an OU, we can use Move-ADObject to move a global security group. So let's take a look at that. Move-ADObject, identity, and it's going to be the LDAP path. So right here's my security group. And here's the parent OU, and then here's the domain. And I'm going to add my extra character here, so I'm going to wrap this around to the next line, the target path. So this is the source, the identity is the source where it's located. And the target path where I want to move it to, I'm going to move it from the parent OU to the child OU, which is nested inside the parent OU and the domain, okay? You follow? Okay, now if I run this, again, notice where it currently is located. It's in the parent OU, okay? So I run this command, and unlike OUs, this wasn't set to protect from accidental deletion, so I didn't have to worry about setting that attribute to false before I moved it. But if I refresh, notice that the GSG is gone, the global security group. But if I look in impar versus child, there it is. Okay, so I just moved it from the parent OU here into the child OU here. And there might be different GPOs or access control entries on a discretionary access control list that would affect that object once it had been moved. So there's moving a group. Now, the purpose of having a group is to add members to it, right? That's the whole reason. So, you know, in this case, let's take a look at adding users to a group. And I'm going to come down here and we'll look at this one first. All right. And let's see, members Applejack. I have not created these users yet. So let me use some users that we have here. Domain admins. We have Starbuck and Adama. So we'll pick Adama in this case. So add AD-GroupMember, and in this case, I'm going to add Adama, and I'm going to add this user to my test GSG. Okay, and if I do that, if I look at Adama's account, notice he's a member of test GSG. So I can find out this way, but I can also go to users where my test GSG is, and notice he shows up as a member now. So I've successfully added him. I made him a member of that group, okay? Let's look at this next one. And in this case, add AD-GroupMember, but I'm going to add to the global security group, evil impertinence, in the child OU nested inside the parent OU of my domain. And again, I haven't added these MLP users in yet, so I'm going to do Starbuck. We'll take a look at provisioning and doing, you know, mass account creation and mass or batches in a little while. So if I wanted to add Starbuck into that group and I ran this, matter of fact, we're done with that. I move this down here and then here. All right, so you can see the whole string here, or if I move this to another line, there. So members are Starbuck, and I run that command. And I'll add Adama too, just for giggles, okay? All right, so Adama's added too. So Starbuck and Adama, and if I were to go check that, let's look at evil empire admins and members. There's Adama and there's Starbuck. And the same thing over here. If we check Starbuck's account, member of evil empire admins. Okay. So add AD-GroupMember can be a very powerful command when you're onboarding or provisioning a lot of user accounts at one time, and you need to make them a member of certain default groups to function the way that you want to in Active Directory. And here's another way. Let's say that I wanted to add a user by user principal name, or UPN. I haven't added Rainbow Dash yet, but we'll get to that. I probably should have gone over provisioning before I did this, but I wanted to go over all the commandlets one by one before I start showing you scripts that combine these commandlets with looping and arrays and things. I wanted to at least go over the commandlets one by one. So let's look for a user by their UPN. So we have Saul at battlestars.fleet. That's his user principal logon name, his UPN, right? And so we can just say that here. Saul. but I just wanted to show you a different way. I'm going to use our special character and put this on another line. Okay? So if I make this parenthetical, it's very important that I put it in parentheses. I need to make it parenthetical, but I can call Get-ADUser and filter, and then, instead of using the SAM account, I could use the user principal name, the email, the employee ID, whatever. And I could take the results of that, the return value when Get-ADUser is done, because it's in parentheses, because it's parenthetical, that would then get passed in as a parameter to the members option, right? As an argument to the members parameter. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. That's another way of doing something. So we're not, in this example, we're not using a SAM account name. We're using Get-ADUser. We're filtering to find a user in AD who matches this UPN. And then when we find that account, we're returning the result. We're returning as an argument to the members parameter and add Add-AGroupMember. And this is to the test GSG, right? So if I run this command, now let's go over and look at that OU. And under members, notice there's Saul, right? So he's a member of test GSG. And now let's look at removing members from a group, okay? So removing users from a group, in this first example, Remove-ADGroupMember. So from our evil empire admins, right, our GSG, we're going to go to import versus child, import versus parent, and the OU, there's our LDAP string. And again, I haven't created these users yet. I have to run my provisioning script, but I didn't want to do that. Like I said, I wanted to go over these commands one by one first before we start combining them into longer, scripts. So we'll have to remove a user that we've already added. Who's a user that we have already added to that group? Adama and Starbuck. Okay, so those are some users we could actually remove. Let's remove Adama. He would never be an evil empire admin, right? And again, I'm using confirm false because if I didn't, it would prompt me for every single account. And if I were using a script and I were, removing users, multiple users from a group, I wouldn't want to get prompted every time. So I turn that off with confirm false, but that's up to you, whether or not you want to do that. So if I run this, okay, and then he is removed from evil empire admins. And if we go check, let's check and see if that happened. Now Starbucks in there, but Adama's gone, right? So Adama was successfully removed in this case using Remove-ADGroupMember. And what about our test GSG? We don't have an Apple J, but who did we add to that group? Adama and Saul, right? So let's remove Saul. And if we come over here, look, Saul's gone, okay? And let's look at another Remove-ADGroupMember. And this is our test GSG. Wasn't Adama in there as well? Yeah, so if we wanted to remove Adama, same thing. Okay. And now Adama's gone as well. Okay. So Remove-ADGroupMember. And finally, what if you want to delete a group, a global security group? Well, there's Remove-ADGroup to do that. And let's see, do we still have that group we created, delete me? No, it looks like I thought we created a group, delete me. Where's the LDAP path? It's in users. We make that in users. Let's make sure we still have that. Yeah, here it is. All right, so there's a global security we created in the built-in users container called delete me. So if I wanted to use Remove-ADGroup, and again, I've just turned off the prompt. Remember, if I don't do this, it'll prompt me. And I'd have to answer yes to each one. But if I do that, it'll just wipe the group without prompting me. So let's do a refresh. Let's come over here. And all right, let's try closing and reopen an ADOG. Okay, there, now it refreshed. All right, and so now you can see delete me is gone from the built-in users container. Okay. And this is just a method that can get group members. All right. So if I wanted to, I could go and I could look at test.gsg, and I'm just going to add some users back to test.gsg here. So members, Adama, Starbuck, me. We'll add 3 users into that GSG, okay? And all this is going to do, it's specifying the group as test.gsg. It's going to display the group name, and it's going to get who manages the group, right? That property managed by from Get-ADGroup. And then it's going to use Get-ADGroupMember to get or retrieve the users of that group, okay? There's also another command we can use to get the members of a group. And it's Get-ADGroupMember. And then it would be the group name. So I'm going to grab an LDAP string. Let's look at test.gsg. And we added some users in here. All right. So this LDAP string. And if we run this, all right, so notice it gives us the users of that group. I'm just going to use the select command. We're just going to get the name, the name and the SAM account name, okay? So, all right. So in this case, we know there's 3 users in that group. And just expanding on that a little bit, here's a function, but we're just going to take the code inside of it. And using that command, we can display a list of users in a group. So here we're just going to get ADGroupMember. So we're going to put our code over here, and we're just going to target that group, right? Here's the LDAP string. And we're going to get the group. We're going to get the manager of the group using Get-ADGroup, and the properties returned by that function. And then we're going to use ADGroupMember and the group that we target and assign the members, and then we're going to plug it into a loop. We're just going to display their names, but we can number them sequentially. That's all we're really going to do here. And if I run this command, so notice it'll just number them, right? Adama, Starbuck, and Carly Solali. Now let's look at commands for creating and manipulating user account objects in Active Directory. So to create some user accounts, all right, Emperor Palpatine, and Luke Skywalker. And the command we're going to use is New-ADUser. And the path, we're going to create Emperor Palpatine in the parent OU, Empire Forces parent. And we're going to create Luke Skywalker in the Rebel Forces parent OUs. So we'll add these two users in using New-ADUser. And if we do that, let's go and look at the accounts, okay? Now these accounts are somewhat incomplete because we didn't pass in a lot of options that we really would want to. When we make a user, we want to create that user account with a default password. We want to provision it with, attribute data, certain things. So these are sort of incomplete user accounts, or very basic user accounts. But we'll look at how to populate all those values later in a provisioning script. But, quick and dirty, here's two very simple, albeit incomplete users. In Empire Forces parent, here's Emperor Palpatine. And in Rebel Forces parent, here's Luke Skywalker. Okay, so we've created two user accounts in Active Directory using New-ADUser. Now, what if we wanted to create a more substantial user? Okay, so let's take a look at this. We're going to use the same command, but we're gonna pass on all these attributes and all these options now. So New-ADUser, a password which has to be a secure string. So if you're going to provision a password, you have to convert it to a secure string, and that needs to be parenthetical. It needs to take place inside the parentheses, so the return value is passed as an argument to the account password parameter. We couldn't do that as plain text. It would have to be secure string. So just remember those parentheses there. But okay, the LDAP path, in this case, the Empire Forces parent OU, Battlestar's fleet, those are the domain components. City, the Death Star, Office, Vader's quarters, Company, the Empire, Homepage, Power of the Dark Side.evil, Office phone 666, the profile path and home directory, Anakin Skywalker profile and home on the Galactica, which is for domain controller right now. It's also our file server. You should never make a domain controller your file server, but since this is a small test environment, we're doing that. But we wouldn't want to do that in production, right? We're going to map it as Z to that user's profile when Darth Vader signs in. Display name, user principal name, SAM account name, email address, which that would be set with Exchange. But title, Sith Apprentice, department, Sith Lord's description, primary understudy to Emperor Palpatine, manager is Applejack, who doesn't exist yet because we haven't added her, but we'll say Adama. Until we run our provisioning script, she will not exist. These are some built-in attributes. They're built into a basic Active Directory user object. So we can set properties: Sith Lord, Force User, Empire Citizen, Commander, TIE Fighter Pilot, Traitor, 2 Jedis, whatever, Employee ID 666. Later, when we install and configure Exchange and integrate that into our Active Directory schema, Exchange is a massive enterprise application for managing email. If you guys aren't familiar with that, and we'll do a series of videos on that. Well, when you install it, you modify the schema, and it will add all of these custom attributes into the Active Directory schema. So it actually changes the class structure of a user object. It adds new attributes to it. And we have to update the schema, but we haven't done that yet, so we're stuck with just the built-in. We don't have those custom attributes yet. When we install Exchange, we will, but this is just to give you an example of adding a more full-featured user, a more functional user that has attributes set. And so if we create this user, I'm going to go ahead and run this script. And so we created our user. And if we go look at Empire Forces parent, I had to refresh there, but there is our Darth Vader user, right? Primary understudy to Emperor Palpatine. Let's go look through the user's attributes. Anakin Skywalker, Office, Vader's quarters, phone number, email address, website, Power of the Dark Side.evil, City, the Death Star, Okay, so all of those attributes that we populated, here's the profile, Anakin Skywalker, profiles, organization, Sith Apprentice, Sith Lords to Empire. He's managed by Adama in this case. Kind of mixing our Star Wars and our BSG bit. All right, so that's a much more full-featured, and this account has a password set on it. So Darth Vader can sign in. Emperor Palpatine, he's not ready yet. He can't sign in. He's never had a password set on his account. Also, we didn't set any of those other attributes as well. So those are not set there, see? Okay, so that's creating a new ADUser. Let's look at setting attributes on an account that already exists, which is Set-ADUser. Okay. So on our Darth Vader account that we created, let's look at the current description, right? Primary understudy to Emperor Palpatine. That's his current description. But let's say that he killed his master, Palpatine, and now he's the new Sith Master who has to take for himself now an apprentice. All right, so let's run this command. So this is to set attributes on a user object that already exists in AD. And now if we refresh, so now the description changes, right? Now he's a new Sith Master. He killed Emperor Palpatine. Okay, so he's the new Sith Master there. Remember he told Luke, we can rule the galaxy together. And that's what happens. The Sith apprentice always kills the Sith Master and then takes a new apprentice himself under his wing. I haven't added these accounts yet, but the same thing here, I would just be modifying the title, modifying the description that was on Twilight Sparkle, or modifying the home page. Let's say that we're going to change, Darth Vader's, what is his current website? Powerofthedarkside.evil. Let's change it to Unicorn Sparkles. All right, so we're going to set Darth Vader's website to Unicorn Sparkles. We ran the code, and let's open up Darth Vader. And now look, Darth Vader's favorite website is unicornsparkles.good. Yay! So that's Set-ADUser, a new ADUser that we've covered so far. Now what if you want to get information about all of your user accounts that you've created? Okay. Well, we can simply run the command Get-ADUser in Darth Vader. And that gives us the I can't talk. That gives us the basics on Darth Vader, right? And if we format list, not much more there. But notice, as with the other commands, we have properties. And if I wildcard this, now I can pull a lot more information. So if I run this command now, look, there's his unicornsparkles.good webpage, and I can get his manager, and his display name and distinguished name, and his attributes, all of his attribute settings. I get a lot more information this way that I can target if I wildcard and set properties to everything. So that covers those two. And let's say that I didn't know the SAM account, or I wasn't searching by, what if I wanted to search by UPN? I haven't added Rainbow Dash yet, but Darth Vader's UPN is Anakin Skywalker at battlestars.fleet, right? So I could do this. I could use filter, the filter command, and say where user principal name is like Anakin Skywalker. So if I didn't know the SAM account name, and I wanted to find Darth Vader on his UPN, his user principal name, I could do that using filter or any other attribute that was with his account, right? So look, if I do this, let's clear the screen, and I'll Run it. Look, there's Darth Vader. This time we found him by his UPN and not his SAM account. But what if I wanted to get the employee ID? Could I do that? If I do this, and let's get all the properties and wildcard it, and I'm just going to wildcard EM in this case. All right. So Darth Vader or Anakin's employee ID is 666. Well, look, I can take this attribute here. Instead of user principal name, I can say where employee ID like 666. And then what I still be able, I'm not going to pass it to, I won't get all the properties either. I'll just get the basic account in this case. And pipe it to format list, but can I find him by his employee ID? Yes, I can. See? Employee ID like 666 because he's evil. Not bit. You get the idea. All right. Name, any other attribute we wanted to use with Get-ADUser. We could in these examples. Okay? Using the like operator, and in this case the filter. We can use the filter parameter. What if I wanted to move a user? Same thing, right? Move-ADObject, it worked for OUs, it worked for groups, it works for users too. So I'd call Move-ADObject. Identity, here's the LDAP path and the target path. I'm going to add our funky character under the tilde. I'm going to move this to the next line, and look, in this case our target path, Darth Vader, I want to move him to the child OU. So he's currently right here. He's in the parent OU with Emperor Palpatine. But what if I wanted to move him here into the child OU? All right, so let's run this code. All right, and now I'm going to have to do a lot of refreshing, but I have to do a refresh here too. There, okay. So a lot of refreshing, but now notice that Darth Vader's gone out of the parent OU, and he's been moved to the child OU. Okay? So, same command. And we've used it to move OUs, we've used it to move global secure groups, and we've used it to move user accounts in Active Directory. And let's say I want to delete a user. So I can use Remove-ADUser. In this case, Luke Skywalker. Actually, I don't want to get rid of him. I like Luke. We need Luke. We need him. So we'll make another user here, and we'll just call this user Fall Guy. Okay, he'll be the Fall Guy. And give him a password. All right, so that way we can keep our Luke Skywalker, right? So Fall Guy. Let's say we wanted to remove a user. Well, we could. And right, that's what we called him. Let me get rid of that R there. That's what we called him, Fall Guy. Fall Guy. VPN is Fall Guy. He's in Rebel versus Parent, right? Checking, and Rebel versus Parent. And confirm false. Let's run this code. And now, if we refresh, Fall Guy is gone. He was taken out by Empire forces. Oh no, but at least we still have Luke. Let's look at a way to change a password on an account that's already been created or already exists in PowerShell. And that's with the command Set-ADAccountPassword. And there's several different ways to use it. If I use it just like this, it's going to actually prompt me. Let me change that to a user account that I already have, test user 2, which is built into my built-in users container there. So if I were to run this, it would just prompt me. It would ask me for the current password. I don't remember what it was. I think that was it. And then it would ask me for the new password and confirm it twice. So I'm going to click cancel and stop. So that's one way to use Set-ADAccountPassword bit. A lot of times with a batch script where you're provisioning accounts and you're going to set sort of a default randomized password, you'll have some code, and actually I have a couple of scripts that do that, that'll generate random passwords, and we'll look at how to do that later. But I don't know what's going on with my clipboard tonight. Hello, clipboard, wake up, wake up. There, okay. So let's get this kind of spread out. Let's get this out onto a tray. Nice. If you guys are Steven fans, you know what I'm referring to. He's this guy on YouTube I really like, and basically his whole thing is he just eats really old MRE kit meals. Totally awesome. I just can't stop watching that guy. But anyway, you could randomly create a string. In this case, I have a set of functions that creates a random 36-character password. And then you can provision an account with that based on a certain pattern. And you can create hundreds or thousands of accounts that way that are already set up with passwords and therefore ready to sign in or to log in. But trying to keep it simple for this example, we're just going to use supercalifragilistic in sort of a cryptic way there. But now remember, it can't be plain text. It has to be converted to a secure string. So it's a parenthetical expression. And in the parentheses, we have to call the convert to secure string method first on the simple plain text. Force it so we don't have to worry about a prompt. And then all of that, once it's created to a secure string, gets passed as an argument to the new password parameter. Okay. And again, we don't have a Spark T, so let's look at another user account. We'll do test user 1 here. Okay. All right, so this way we updated or changed to test user 1's password to supercalifragilistic in a cryptic sort of way. Or let's say we wanted to change user 2's password. We could change user 2's password as well, okay? Or, we could use the extremely super awesome and difficult to guess password, right? Of course, everybody uses that. All right, so just, again, that's Set-ADAccountPassword, okay? And these are all just some basic PowerShell commands. It took a while to go through them all, but now that we've gone through them one by one, we can look at combining them with repetition structures, decision structures, arrays, and do some things with them in provisioning accounts or writing applications with a GUI to look for errors in AD, things like that.